Today we're going to be talking to you about low-code application development using Oracle Application Express or Oracle Apex. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to build a very simple time card application. It'll have a home page, a dashboard page, some time cards, and employees. We also want to apply some business rules to our application. For example, when submitting a weekly time card, you must have at least some hours. If you're a part-time employee and you enter more than 40 hours, a justification is required. Likewise, for full-time employees, if you enter more than 40 hours, you also need to provide a justification. A person may only submit one time card per week, and hours may not be entered in advance, meaning you can only enter time cards for weeks that have already passed or the current week. Our application will also have a very simple approval workflow. When a time card is submitted by an employee, an email will be sent to their approver. From that email, the approver can click on a link to go to the application and approve that request. Our application also has two user roles, the employee role and the manager role. Employees can submit time cards for their managers to approve. Managers can log into the system and see all of their employees' time cards. We're also going to integrate with a remote system via REST. The idea is that we will punch out to an external system to retrieve a confirmation code when approving a time card. This confirmation code is then stored in our system. The development flow for this application is quite simple. We will start by creating a data model. Once we have our data model, we will then go on to create a default application on that data model. From there, we'll go and refine our application, we'll perform some tests, and finally, we will deploy this application to another instance of Oracle Apex. Once we've logged into Apex, we'll go into a SQL workshop and the object browser to verify that we have no objects already in our database. There are no tables, no data, no nothing. Now let's go and create a very simple data model. Let's go into something called Quick SQL. We can open this up from the Utilities section. In Quick SQL, I'm just going to start writing some very simple shorthand that'll generate a data model for me. I'll need an employees table with name, the employee has a type, maybe like full-time, part-time, a few other columns. Notice that the right side of my screen will automatically refresh with the exact DML statements I need to run this SQL and create these objects in my database. I'll go add in the weekdays, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. These columns will be used to store the number of hours the employee has worked for that day. Now, I want to go and insert some sample data. So what I'll do is I'll type in /insert 10 to insert 10 employee records. I can do the same for time cards just to get some sample data. I'll click on Generate SQL and I can see all the sample insert statements to the right. Now, to speed things up a little bit, I'm just going to paste in the data model I've already built a little bit ago. I also want to go and change a couple of settings for this data model. Let's add the row version number, add a PL/SQL API, include the job so I can rerun my SQL statements, and also some history tables for some tracking, just so I know what fields were updated and when. All right, now I have my SQL statement, and I'm going to go and save this. Let's call it time cards and save this script. Now, my data model on the left has a lot more complexity, but it isn't really that scary. All I'm doing is adding some default values, and I'm setting some constraints, so the hours of day are between 0 and 24, for example. Looking at my script now, I can see I have about 7,000 lines of SQL. Don't worry, most of that is just sample data. Let's go and run this script, so I have some tables and sample data to begin my application. I'm going to run the script, which has about 278 statements. All right, now you may see there's some errors. Well, that's because these tables don't exist yet, and remember how I checked the box to include the drops. All right, now we have a data model. Let's go and start creating an application. From the script results page, click on Create App from Script. This will now land you into the Create Application wizard. I'll call my application Time Cards, and I'm going to go and add a dashboard page. Select Dashboard, and now let's go and define some charts. For the first chart, I want a pie chart. So click on the pie icon and give it a chart name. So how about, the type of employees, employee by type. Here I can select the table name, for example, employees. The label column will be the employee type. And I just want to do a count of the employees. Now, I'm going to speed things up a little bit, but basically I can define additional charts directly from the Create Application wizard. I can always change these later as well in the developer experience. Let's go and add that page. Now, I'm going to also move my dashboard page up a little bit, just so it's the second thing I see after the home page. Now, this history page that I have will check all the changes. I want this to be an administrative page, so I'm just going to check the Set as Administration page button. Now I can save my changes, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it an icon to the employees page, something a little bit more friendly. Let me look for a user's icon. Perfect, this looks appropriate. So let's save these changes, and then go on to add some application features to my application, such as access control to allow role-based user authorizations, some activity reporting, and finally feedback, so my users can actually provide feedback directly through this application. All right, now we can go ahead and create this application. All right, done. Now let's go ahead and see what my application contains. It has about 25 different pages based on the different screens and admin features I've added. When I run this application and sign in, I'll be taken to a home page which has a couple of different links, the dashboard, employees, and time cards page. From the dashboard, I see some data, but this data distribution doesn't look quite right. In the background, I've run a script to just clean up the data so it looks a little bit more realistic. I don't really need chart 4, so I'm going to go and edit this page where I'm launched into Page Designer. Right-click, delete region, save the page, and now when I run my application again, you'll notice at the bottom charts region, the one chart will span the entire width of the page. Now let's go and navigate to the home page and see what I have. From the employees page, I want to make a small change to this report. For example, I'm not showing the average number of hours an employee works. Let's go and fix that. From Page Designer, I'm going to go and edit this report. It's some SQL, but it's not that complicated. I'm going to write a very simple line of SQL that'll calculate the average of the total hours. Hey, there's a small error. Oh, I just need to add the reference to employees. No big deal. I can validate my SQL directly in line. Save the page and run it again. And now you'll notice I have a new column for average hours. But something's not quite right. Let's go and add the format mask to this column. Back in Page Designer, I'm going to search for the mask property and find a format mask that I think is appropriate. This one looks good. Save and run the page. And now you notice that my format mask has been applied. I can do a whole lot more with interactive reports. For example, I could filter on Canada to see all the employees in Canada who are working. And if I want to go back, just click on the reset button. There's a wealth of functionality in interactive reports. Let's drill into an employee and explore some more features. Now I've drilled into an employee, but this report doesn't look particularly attractive. Let's go and hide the weekends. Just click on the column header and click on the Hide Column button. I also don't want to see comments here. Much better. Now I can remove the employee filter, and let's save this as a default report so that whenever any other user sees this, they see exactly what I've configured. Let's go further refine this report a little bit more. I want to add a few more columns. For example, this is the time cards report, but I'm not really showing total number of hours. Let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to paste in a very simple SQL statement. It's basically going to sum up all the weekday columns and create a new column called total hours. Now, I also want to get the employee type. This is just a very simple inline select, but this will tell me whether the employee is a full-time employee or a part-time employee. And finally, let's go and get their target hours. If you're full-time, I want to show 40, and if you're part-time, I want to show 20 hours. That's a target number of hours you should be working. Let's go and validate that SQL, save my page, and run it again. Now, my report looks good, but I see a confirmation column. Let's go and move this to the far right. From the Actions menu, I can open up the Columns dialog, and from here I can select Columns and just push it down to the very end. Apply my changes, and I can see that I've done that. Now, let's also put the total hours and target hours next to each other. No big deal, I can just move that around. And when I'm done with these report changes again, I'm going to save this as the default report. All right, just a quick recap. We've created our data model and we have a basic application built on that same data model. Now it's time to refine this application a little bit more. Let's begin by looking at the Create Time Card page. Now, this page doesn't look particularly interesting. To clean this up, let's go into Page Designer, quick edit into any item, and now you're taken into Page Designer so you can update the look and feel of this form. Let's just drag around some items to set them correctly. For example, I'd like to have all of the weekday hours to be side by side next to each other so it's easier to do some data entry. We can do this by dragging and dropping, or we can use a property editor to the far right. Now, we can also update the labels of some of these items. For example, employee instead of employee ID. Now, the confirmation code, for example, another layout change we can do is move it to the top right. All right, so everything looks pretty good now, but there's a few things I want to change. First, the confirmation code should really just be a display only. It's not something you can edit. And let's also add an item to calculate the total number of hours you've worked. All right, so for example, I just drag and drop an item, rename it to total, and what I also want to do is, because this item is not based on a database column, I'm just going to set the source type to null. And now I just want to set a default value for Sunday. So when I open up this form again, it'll automatically be set to 0, and I can just enter the number of hours I've worked. Run the page again, and let's open up the Create dialog. The layout looks much better. Now what I also want to do is add a simple validation. Going back into Page Designer, I'm going to go to the Processes tab and right-click under Validation. Let's go and create a validation to ensure that our business rules are actually followed. For example, if you're a part-time employee that works over 20 hours, you have to provide a justification. So let's go enter in a simple error message. Something like, part-time employees must provide comments when entering more than 20 hours. To enforce this business rule, we're going to write a little bit of SQL code. Basically, if the sum of all the hours is greater than 20 and you haven't provided comments, then we must return this validation error. And we only want to fire this validation when this employee is a part-time employee. In order to do that, we're going to write another very simple select statement that's just going to tell us whether or not this employee is part-time. We're going to need the exact same validation for full-time employees as well. So let's go ahead and duplicate this validation and just make a few changes. First, I'm going to update the name, and then let's go and update the actual hour count from 20 to 40 hours. And then let's update the error message as well. We want to say full-time employees must provide comments when working more than 40 hours. Save the page, and we have our business logic enforced. Let's go and recreate a time card. Now, before we go too far, I want to take a moment to explain some of the changes that have been happening in the background by my colleague. Apex allows for multiple developers to work on the same page at the same time. So while I have been modifying some of the validations, in the background, my colleague has been updating the forms for this page. For example, the status and week of are now select lists. There are default values of 0 for all the items, and also the total count is updated the moment I make a change to some of the columns. Let's verify that our business logic is hooked up. I've entered 48 hours. I'm going to try to create a time card, but I can't. I've gotten that validation error saying I must enter some comments. So I'm going to add a very basic comment and click create again, and it works. I will also validate this for part-time employees. So here's a record which has 20 hours already. I'll update that to 21 hours, try to save the changes, and it won't let me until I add comments. Perfect. Apex enables multiple developers to work on applications simultaneously. Let's go and take a look at the monitor activity pages to see what other developers are up to. I can browse developer activity in a number of different ways. First, by developer, just to see the number of component changes made by each individual developer. I can also go back and view developer changes by hour, in a bar chart, by day, by application, and a whole lot more. Now, going back to my application, I'm going to go and run my time cards app. And what I want to do is provide some feedback that my other developers can action upon. To add feedback, it's quite simple. From the header of the page, there's a feedback icon. Clicking on this feedback icon will bring up a feedback form. I can provide my experience and also some comments, such as please add the application logo. Then I can simply submit this feedback. Now, other developers on my team can go ahead and action that feedback. In the meantime, let's go take a look at the form again. There's a new send email to approver process that was actioned upon by another developer on the team. If I go and inspect this process, you'll see it's a very simple call to send an email based on a given template. Let's go and take a look at that template. To do so, go to the Shared Components page and then click on Email Templates from the Other Components section. On this page, you'll see all the email templates. Notice that this one was updated just 100 seconds ago. Clicking into the email template, I can see all the email template details. For example, what the header is or what the body contains. If you notice, there's just a couple of substitution strings and some very basic HTML. Back in the application, let's go and file one more piece of feedback. How about making the login page look a little bit better? The next thing I'm going to do is hook up an authorization scheme for my application. Let's go into authorization schemes from Shared Components and create a new one for whether a person is a manager or not. This is going to type in manager for the authorization scheme name, and let's write a very simple SQL query. Click create authorization scheme, and looks like I forgot to specify the error message. All right, let me just enter this in really quickly. You are not authorized to view this page. Okay, now my authorization scheme has been created. The next thing is to go and apply this to all of the pages and links where I want to hide some actions based on whether or not they meet the authorization scheme. So I'm going to go and modify the page navigation on the home page and simply go and edit that list component. I'm going to modify the dashboard list item and make it so that only managers can view this. This is because I only want managers to see the overall status of all time cards. Let's go and do the same thing for the employee screen, right? I only want managers to be able to see the employee screen. And finally, for the time card screen, it's all fine. I'd like to have anyone view this page because I want employees to enter their time cards. Now it's time to make the same changes to the navigation menu. Going back to Shared Components and clicking on Navigation Menu will show me the navigation menu list. I'm going to make the same exact changes here. So let's go into Dashboard, set the auth scheme to Manager, and the same for employees. Finally, now to finish everything up, I just need to update the pages and apply the same auth scheme to these pages. So if you inadvertently ended up at this page, you'd still be unable to access it unless you're a manager. To do this, simply edit the page. For example, this dashboard page, I'm going to filter on security and apply the manager authorization scheme for the page. I will do the same for the other pages as well. Let's verify if everything looks correct. So I am a manager role right now, and I can navigate to the dashboard page and other pages just fine. What if I log out and log in as a user, which is not a manager? So I'm going to log in as Shakib, and just take a moment here to notice that the logo has been applied to the login page, as well as a nice looking background. So I know there's been work going on in the background. Now let's click into the time cards page, and I can see all of the other employees, although I am not a manager. I'm going to go file some feedback for this, so that the access control is also hooked up to this report. All right, the feedback's been submitted. Let's go and log out again and log back in as the mic role. Let's go into the time cards page and go and edit this report. I'm going to go and modify the SQL query and simply add another predicate. This simple SQL statement will only show me records that I can approve or my own records. Now I can go and save my page. Now that our application is taking shape, let's go and test out the PL/SQL APIs and perform some security testing. To do this, we're just going to go into Utilities and click on the Apex Advisor. From the Advisor window, let's go and select all of the security checks. These will check things like authorization and session state protection, just to make sure I'm all set. It identified two different items for me. That the target page, page 3 for employees, doesn't really have the authorization set. I'm going to go and modify this page and simply set the authorization scheme for this page to be manager only, just like the links in the navigation menu and the homepage cards are. If I go back to advisor and recheck again, you'll notice that it will no longer flag these two items. It's already been fixed. Let's take a moment to look at some of the PL/SQL APIs that we have. I can go into SQL commands. I'm going to paste in a very simple API. This will go and insert an employee in the employees table. This statement will insert JT Thomas and set the approver as Mike Hitchwa. I'm going to run and statement processed. Let's go and also add some time cards for this user. Now I'll paste in a script that'll insert time cards for JT. This is going to insert about 10 time cards, and really it's just going to insert a random set of data. Let's go and run this statement, and statement has an error. Well, it says that I have to enter comments. Again, my business rules are enforced. I'm just going to provide some very basic comments for testing. Okay, statement processed. Time to run the application again, and let's filter on JT. I'll click on employees. I'll search JT in my employees table, and you see my record. If I click into JT, I can also see all the time cards that were generated from that script. Now let's take a look at that external system interaction. I'll go into SQL Workshop again and go into the object browser. Filter on procedures and click on the Get Confirmation Code procedure. Here's all the code. All I need to do here is know that it's making a REST callout to the following API and passing in the time card ID. The result of this API call will return a JSON object. This object will contain the confirmation code, which I will then use and update the time card that I passed in. I can validate this by going to SQL commands and running a simple script, which will go and get the confirmation code for me. So I'm going to get the first time card, which has been submitted, and then get the confirmation code for that. And here's the output. The output returns a confirmation code and the status approved. If I run it again, I'll get a different confirmation code because it's a different employee and a different time card. So far, my APIs are functional and the application looks pretty secure. Let's go and export this application for deployment on another server. I'm just going to go to Application Export, select the application, and get a SQL file export of this app. I'll go into my other environment then and simply import it. Just a brief recap. So far, we've created our data model, created our application, refined it, tested it, and now we're going to go and deploy it. Now I'm logging into another environment. I'll sign in, and I already have a workspace here. Once I'm signed in, I'll go into the application builder. Notice that there are no top apps here. All right, go into application builder, no applications, click on import, and simply select that SQL file that I've got an export from. Click next, and then follow the steps. This will go ahead and install this application in this new environment. My application is installed, and now I can go and run it. So just to recap, I've now deployed my application to this new environment. I have the same account set up here as well, so I'll log in. Once logged in, I can go into the dashboard and notice that I have no data. I have no time cards in the system, although I do have my employees already. I'll sign out and sign back in as Shakib. Here, again, I only see time cards, and I have no time cards already. Let me go and create one. I'll create a new time card for the week of March 10th, and I'll enter some hours as well. How about 8 hours a day? Okay, this looks good. Let me go and create. My time card has been created. Now, an email will be kicked off and sent over to my approver. Here's the email that Mike received, asking him to approve my time card request. When he clicks on the link in the email, he'll be asked to sign in again. He'll sign in with his own credentials, and then he'll be taken to the employees page. If he clicks on my name, he will see all the time cards that I've submitted. He can simply go and change the status to approved, apply changes, and now you will see there's a confirmation code that's already been applied. This came from the external system. If if I go and modify that record again, notice that everything is read-only. The user interface of Apex is designed to be responsive out of the box. Let's go and try the exact same application again, but this time as if I was on a mobile device. I'm going to sign in using my credentials again, and then go and submit a time card. I'll sign into the system, I'll click on time cards, click on create, and let's go and enter some hours for this new time card. I also want to test the validations, just to make sure that our business logic still works correctly. So let's go and enter some more hours for Thursday so that my total number of hours is greater than 40. If I click on create, you'll notice that there's an error. Full-time employees must provide comments when submitting more than 40 hours. Let me enter this comment, click on create again, and my time card has been created. The moment I submitted my time card, another email was sent out to my approver. Mike receives this email and can click on the View and Approve Time Card Request button. He'll be taken to the system again, where he can sign in and then go and view all the time cards that I've submitted. From here, he can go into the time card which has not yet been approved, simply change the status, and then apply changes. I would also like to take a moment to show you some of the administration, monitoring, and analytics functionality. From the administration screen, I can click on the top users report to see activity by users of the application. For example, on this screen, I can see an hour-by-hour breakdown of all the activity performed by these two users. Finally, to wrap things up, let's take a look at the dashboard. We see that there are 2 time cards which are under status approved, and under the time cards by week chart, I can see which week's time cards have been submitted. This concludes the Apex demonstration. This demonstration was built using apex.oracle.com, which is a free public service. We were using the Apex 18.2 release. The application and the data model were created from scratch live during this demonstration. There was no JavaScript coded during this demo, and all of the development activities were done using a web browser. The application was deployed finally to an internal Oracle server. I'd like to take a moment to talk about what was not shown in this demonstration. Now, there are 2 developers working concurrently during this demo. The first thing is that we adjusted the generated data to be more realistic. To do this, we created a new script in SQL Workshop which set all the dates to Sunday. We also adjusted the hours for full-time employees versus part-time employees. And finally, we set their names for their email addresses. We also adjusted the triggers to implement our business rules. Basically, hours must be greater than 0, and comments are required when hours are greater than 20 or 40, depending on whether you're a part-time employee or a full-time employee. We also uploaded a couple of files into the application to serve as logo images and the background image for the login screen. We also updated the login page in the background to provide the login image and set the application logo. Finally, we also updated the total number of hours on the time card edit page by using a PL/SQL expression, which just computed the sum of all the weekdays. We hope this short video demonstration gives you a better understanding of how Oracle Apex can be used to rapidly build real-world applications.